Is your detective an ongoing character, or is this a one-off?
Well, he's been in previous novels as well. He actually started out in my very first translated novel, Dead Before Dying. He was a minor character, and that's why I made him an alcoholic. He was actually supposed to be in that novel the comic relief, because the protagonist of Dead Before Dying was a very serious guy, and I created Benny Griessel to be the comic relief. But he was just such an interesting character. Whenever he walked onto the page or into a scene, he would make things happen, and he would really be fun to work with. So by the end of that book, I knew that he deserved more. But then I had already created him as a bit of a cliche as this alcoholic cop, so I couldn't change that. Because when I started out, I didn't know that he was going to feature in future novels. So he came back in a later novel called Devil's Peak, where he was one of the protagonists, one of the major characters. And in that book, his wife kicks him out of the house for the first time because of his drinking and says, "You've got to sober up. You've got 6 months to sober up." And by the end of Devil's Peak, there was no resolution in Benny's personal life. And for me, the big problem is, these characters become so well known to me. I mean, they become friends. They become like family. That when you finish a book, you worry about them. Are they going to be okay? Is Benny still sober? And then you start making up stories to ensure that they're okay, because like children, you worry about them all the time. You don't want to worry. And that was one of the sources of 13 Hours. It was the further life and times of Benny Griessel to a certain extent.
The charm of Benny is that he really is very flawed.
Yeah.
But he's a really good guy.
Yeah.
You probably should never tell him that, because
yeah, no, he wouldn't believe me anyway. He does not think he's not a complicated man. He does not see things in shades of grey. It's either right or wrong, and he knows that he's drinking, and in 13 Hours his philandering is not good, and he tries to rationalize it, but he knows that it's not right. So although he very much is aware of right and wrong, he finds it hard to live up to his own expectations.
The first murder and a missing girl, another American backpacker,
right.
And I thought, oh, who cares if there's an American? Who cares if there's a? But this goes. I mean, the government is suddenly down on Benny's back, saying, "You have to find this missing kid now."
Yes.
And I was like, why? But in the book, it makes a lot of sense very quickly.
Right. Well, tourism is our biggest industry. Gold mining used to be. Tourism has now surpassed that as our #1 earner of foreign currency. It is a very, very important industry in South Africa. And so the government is clamping down on crime against tourism. Now, let me just say this, that it's very safe for tourists to come to South Africa. The crime statistics are very interesting. We receive about 1 million visitors from the Northern Hemisphere every year, and of that 1 million, only 360 annually, more or less, are the victims of any sort of crime, which can be petty crime, a cell phone stolen, to a bit more serious stuff. And that's the same crime statistic that you will find in Ireland and in Wales, for instance. So if you're willing to go to Ireland and Wales, then you should be fine coming to South Africa. But the whole idea of tourists being very precious to South Africa, and we need to look after them, it's always great to have more pressure on the cop. If the cop has to solve a murder and there's no pressure, then it's not as exciting as when Benny's bosses say, "Look, we've got to solve this thing and solve it quickly and find the girl." I mean, the one, as you say, the one backpacker has been killed. The other one is on the run. She's being hunted by very bad people who wants to kill her. And I think the real essence of the book is for Benny to save this girl. But in order to save her, he's got to solve the first murder.
And he's under a lot of professional pressure to solve both cases.
Yeah.
Because one is a very high-profile media circus,
right.
The other is this tourist, and then he's got a big dinner date with his estranged wife, which is always
Yeah.
And I think he's got it pretty much down to the second how long he has not been drinking. And so the personal pressure, you know.
Yeah.
You're basically a sadist if you're a writer. You have to make things really unpleasant for your character to make it work.
I think that's the essence of storytelling, is that you have to put your character through it. First of all, you have to hope that the reader really identifies and roots for the protagonist, and then you've got to make it as difficult as possible for him. That's how you hopefully build suspense. If it was an easy job, if the fight between good and evil was even or predictable, then you won't get the reader to turn the page. So hopefully that would all add to people keeping on reading.
The book is 13 Hours. It's a mystery novel. I've been speaking with the author, Deon Meyer, and 13 Hours, published by Random House of Canada.